for the October Monthly Magic Sew Along. So today we're going to be making an October themed mug rug. This was a fun little project to do. Well, I think they're all fun to do. So let's get started. Okay, so this is the Monthly Magic Sew Along. We've been storing all of our monthly mug rugs in a binder with the months on there. And let's just review them quickly. There is January. It's always fun to lay these out. February. March. April. May. Here's June. July, August, reminds me of going to the lake when we went. September, had a fall theme with my favorite fabric line. And drum roll please, October. Gosh, we only have 2 more months. 2 more. Okay. I typically start my video showing you the diagram. This was a really rough diagram that I drew, but this was the diagram. And this is the wonderful mug rug. Now I'm going to switch the camera around and we'll get started on making this fun little project. Okay, so I have gathered the materials that I want to use to make this month's mug rug, and I have starched them all, and these are the fabrics I'm going to use. Quite a collection there of strips. Now all these came from my scrap containers, so that's pretty fun because I am using my scraps. So I want to show you the cuts of fabric you're going to need. You're going to need 2 1-inch squares. You are going to need 5 1.5-inch squares, and this is all from your background fabric. And you're going to need 1 1.5 by 2.5-inch strip. You're also going to need 2 1.5 by 5.5 and 2 1.5 by 7.5 inches. You're going to need 1 green 1.5 by 1.5-inch square, as well as 1 brown 1.5 by 1.5-inch square. You're going to need an assorted number of strips that are 1.5 inches, and that is going to be for the block portion of the pumpkin. All the oranges are going to be used to make this. Now, if you didn't want to do a pieced one, you could do a solid pumpkin if you'd like and just quarter those if you didn't want to do all the pieces, but I wanted to change it up a little bit and do something a little bit different. And then for the strips that go along the side here, those need to be 1 3/4 by 4 inches, and we will end up trimming those down later, but that's the basics of what you need. And I did just cut a variety of fabrics. I won't need all these, but I wanted to cut a variety so that I would have a choice of what I thought looked good. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to sew some strip sets together. Now I'm going to sew mine together in strip sets of 2 and 3. And the reason I want to do just a mix-up is so that when I line up my strip sets, you're going to need 4 strip sets of 5. But we want to be sure that there's a mix-up of them so we don't have 2 right next to each other. So I'm just going to start sewing these together. I'm going to sew one group together in 3 and the other groups together in 4s. I mean, 1 in 3s and 1 in 2s, and then I'll be able to mix and match them nicely. Okay, now that I have some of my strips cut, I am going to cut these 2 inches wide. Now I'm going to end up trimming them down to 1.5 inches, but I'm going to oversize them so that I can trim them down into nice, perfectly sized strip sets. So I'm just going to cut these up. Alright, now that I have my strip sets cut approximately, then I can start laying them out to see how they're gonna go together. And the only thing I'm really looking for is I don't want 2 of the same fabrics right beside each other. They can be diagonally, I'm not concerned with that, but I don't want them to be right next to each other. Okay, so that was quick to lay out. Now I'm just going to sew each row together, and then I'm going to trim each row down to 1.5 inches. Okay, so I have the strip set sewn together, and now I'm just going to trim them down to 1.5 inches. So you can see now why I oversize those. I just like them all to just look perfect. Well, not perfect, but see, you can see now how that's going to look. And I just need 4 of these, so I'm going to go ahead and trim these. The next thing we're going to do is snowball each of these corners to make the pumpkin. So we're going to snowball these corners right here just to make the pumpkin. And the way we do that, we're just going to draw a line from corner to corner. I will pin those on there. You do have to be careful with some of these background fabrics. You want to be sure you're drawing on the wrong side. Alright, now I'm just going to pin those down and sew right across the line. Okay, so I'm going to remove these pins, and I'm just going to take my ruler and I'm going to trim off these corners. Okay, I'm just going to take these to the iron and I'm just going to press those back, and then that is the base of our pumpkin. That's the base right here of our pumpkin. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, we're going to make this little piece right across the top. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to take our 2 1-inch squares, and on the back side we're going to mark right across there. And we are going to snowball 2 corners, these 2 corners. And then we're going to trim them off and press them back just like we did for the pumpkin. Okay, so I'm just going to trim those off. And press those back. And that becomes the leaf right here. That becomes the leaf right there. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the brown square, or whichever one you chose for the stem, and I'm just going to sew those together and press them open. Okay, so there is the stem and the leaf, and now we just need to sew these other two pieces on. Now on the stem side you sew another 1.5 inch square, and then on the other side you take your other piece and sew that on, and then we'll be trimming that off. So those are ready to sew on, and as you can see there, I need to trim that off 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to sew that on, and then I'm going to trim off that little bit there on the end. So it's going to look just like that, and it's going to end up looking just like this. Now I'm not sure why I left that on there. I usually trim those right off. Okay, so then there's the pumpkin base. We need to put the outside border on, so I'm going to sew the 2 5.5 inch strips and then the 2 7.5 inch strips. And it's going to look just like this. Okay, so I think I've got the colors picked out, and I'm just going to sew those together and press them. Okay, so I have those sewn together, and I'm going to have to trim 1/4 of an inch off of each of these. I don't know. I think I got my measurements a little wrong, but that's okay. We can trim them down a little bit. There we go. Now just sew those on there, and the top will be done. Now this is measuring a little more than 6 by 10.5, but we'll be trimming some off here and a little bit there after we've quilted it. So we're just going to be basting it, and then you'll quilt it. Now I will be doing a tutorial on the binding, but I will, a viewer has requested that, but I will be doing that in another video. Okay, so just as a reminder, I typically cut the batting 8 by 10.5, so I am going to trim just a little bit off here to bring it down to 10 1/4. I'm just going to trim 1/4 of an inch off there. And then my batting will be 8 by 10.5, and the backing I'll cut at 9 by 11. And then I'll just quilt it. And just like with all the others, I will most likely do the straight line quilting. In the comments below, be sure to tell me how you're doing on your mug rugs. Let me know where you're at. And until next time, have fun quilting.